10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Oh, it seems like yesterday, doesn't it? Right, what am I talking about? Half the people, 3/4 of the people in my control room weren't even born. That was 1980, the Miracle on Ice, the U.S. defeating Russia to win the gold medal. And, of course, we're in the middle of that. Tomorrow we have a key matchup, the U.S. and Canada. And the winner of that game will be odds-on favorite to take the gold medal in the finals. And, of course, the women's great success on the women's side. And joining us now to talk about all of this is our friend Marc Thiessen. Now, we always allude, Marc, you, of course, a columnist, Washington Post, former speechwriter for President Bush. You know, you and I, we always allude to hockey a little bit. We do a sidebar with hockey. You're a Rangers fan. I'm a Devils fan. But now we're talking about hockey. You wrote a great column the other day at the WashingtonPost.com about hockey and the Olympics specifically.
Absolutely. Well, look, a lot of people have been calling the U.S. defeat of Russia in the game the biggest win since the 1980 Miracle on Ice.
And you're talking about a week ago or so when we beat them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was last Saturday, and of course the Russians are now eliminated. This was some sort of a big upset and comparable to the Miracle on Ice. And look, great hockey. I mean, Team USA is doing a fantastic job. They're dominating the play, and there's a very good chance they'll win the gold medal. They've got a good shot at it. But even if they do, it's not going to be the Miracle on Ice. I mean, nothing is going to compare to what happened in 1980. And the reason for that is that the Miracle on Ice, you got to remember, transcended sports. It was a world geopolitical event. I mean, if you think back to what was happening in the world at that time, the Soviet Union was ascendant. They had just invaded Afghanistan. They were on the march in Eastern Europe, in Africa, and Latin America. And the United States was having a crisis of confidence. This was during the worst days of the Carter administration with gas lines and stagflation. Everyone was saying we need to have peaceful coexistence with Soviet communism. We need to learn to live with communism. And it was really because they had achieved military superiority, and we didn't think we could defeat them. And then these kids, these college kids, wearing the red, white, and blue, came in and took on the Soviet Red Army on the ice and won. And Americans started thinking, if we can do that on the ice, we can do it in the Cold War. And Ronald Reagan came in to office a year later and had a new strategy for the Cold War, which was we win, they lose, just like they did in Lake Placid. Yeah. And we did it within a decade. So, the moment America regained its confidence was that ice hockey game. And there's not a lot of times in sports that I can think of where a sporting event was a geopolitical event. The only one I can think of that even closely matches it would be like when the South African rugby team won the World Cup right after the end of apartheid, and Nelson Mandela came out. That was a moment that transcended sport. There's not a lot of moments like that, and hockey gave us perhaps the turning point of the Cold War.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you talk, just to make your point, we're talking politically and the meaning of it and what it did for America and what it meant symbolically. But to make your point, and this happened after you wrote the column, Russia then lost, so they didn't even make the medal round. So they're not the same invincible Soviet Red Army Russian team that they once were. To boot, in addition to everything you're saying, which is absolutely true.
No, that's absolutely true. And look, I mean, the Soviets had won, I want to say, 6 out of 8 gold medals in the previous Olympics leading up to that. I think they had lost in 1960 to the U.S., but that was the last time they had lost a gold medal in the Olympics. So they were just the dominant force in international hockey. And also, if you think about it, I mean, the Soviets were this otherworldly team that we rarely saw, except when they came and played some of the NHL teams. Today the star of the Russian team is Alex Ovechkin, who plays for the Washington Capitals. I mean, Washington D.C. is cheering for him the rest of the year when Moscow isn't. So it's just a completely different dynamic than that. And then also you've got the professionals. I mean, this was what made that. If that was a bunch of NHLers who had beaten the Soviets,
wouldn't have meant as much.
The same thing.
No, absolutely not.
I think they should bring the amateurs back. You know, I as much as I love this hockey, I'd love to see college kids play in the Olympics again the way they did in the 1980s.
I am with you, and look at what happened to Tavares of the Islanders. He's out for the season. He got injured. Ed Snyder, the owner of the Flyers, as they were going to Sochi, not him, but the players said, this is ridiculous. You know, it's not good for our fans. It's not good for our league. It's not good for our players. And I got to agree. Let the amateurs do it.
Well, no, absolutely. And as you mentioned, I'm a New York Rangers fan. Matt Zuccarello is injured his hand. He's playing for Norway, and we don't know what's going to happen to him, if he's even going to be back when he comes back. He's our top scorer. So there's billions and billions of dollars in personnel and on the ice being at risk in these games. And also, you know what? How many of these guys would trade a Stanley Cup for a gold medal?
Absolutely. I mean, they'd rather have the Stanley Cup.
They'd rather have the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Mike Eruzione in 1980, after that game, he was offered multiple chances to play in the NHL, and he said, "You know what? Nothing I can achieve at this point. I'm going to retire because nothing I can achieve in the NHL would compare to the Olympic gold." There's not a lot of players who are going to be out there competing for the gold who feel that way right now.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, absolutely. And I think of Ken Morrow, who went right from the Olympic gold to 4 straight Stanley Cups. So the first time he lost, I think must have been culture shock. Now, and just from the geopolitical point of view here, again, speaking about the differences, let's talk about what it does, what Putin represents. I mean, NBC has glorified Putin, glorified Stalin. That Stalin, this was Stalin's plan for the subway system, and he wanted to be palatial for the people of Russia, and he's made it palatial. Great old Stalin. I mean, I can't believe what I'm hearing. But that aside, we got hell breaking loose in Ukraine. We know what side they're on with Iran, with Syria, and right on down the line. And and Putin's now the anti-gay policies and everything else. So a lot of people think that we're moving back, certainly towards a Cold War.
Sure, yeah, and there's certainly, look, Putin is an authoritarian who threatens the independence of his neighbors, who oppresses his own people. There's no question any of that is true. But look, the Russia today is a shadow of its former self. It is not a geopolitical power, superpower like it was during the Cold War. They don't pose an existential threat to the United States or the cause of freedom around the world. Nobody is looking to them as a model for leadership. And so, so it's a different geopolitical time as well. Beating the Russians isn't as big a deal as it was back in 1980 as well.
Yeah.
But Russia he's a dictator. He's a thug. But there's lots of dictators and thugs out there. Beating them on the ice was great. But, again, their players, Evgeny Malkin, he's a Pittsburgh Penguin, Varlamov, he's playing for Colorado Avalanche. I mean, people around the United States are rooting for these guys every week.
I know, that's the whole
Sochi.
That's the whole thing. That's another downside to it. Yeah, that's an absolute another downside to it. I just think the NFL and NHL, and the NBA, enough. I mean, we know that the NBA players are the best in the world. Let's have our college athletes and whatnot go to the Olympics and participate. And it just has lost so much to me.
Absolutely, but I'll tell you, the one thing, you're not hockey fans, but football is more popular than hockey. Basketball is more popular than hockey. Soccer is more popular than hockey. But none of those sports have changed the course of history. Hockey changed the course of history.
Very well said, and very well-written column as usual. This one, No Miracle on Ice in Sochi, by our friend Marc Thiessen, and we appreciate you coming up. But one sidebar here. I watched George Bush. I go to all the sites with the sound bites and all, and we're lucky enough to have our interviews posted there. So I was on Real Clear Politics, and there was Bush, and I clicked on, and it was his whole, I think, almost half-hour speech. It was a veterans event. You know how he takes care and has an affinity for the veterans, and he's doing so much work. And it was just so. It's just so, with his self-deprecation and his teasing of people in the audience as he introduced them. It's just so great to hear him. I long for that. I could have a tear come to my eye, believe it or not. Maybe I'm a cornball, but you wrote for the man and you work closely with him. So when you, on the rare occasions that he speaks now, and you see him or hear him speak, what goes through your mind?
I have a great admiration for the man. But usually what goes through my mind is, boy, I'm really glad I didn't have to write that.
Touche.
He came to the portrait unveiling.
Yes.
I had the pleasure of seeing him there last year, and he wrote his own speech, and I thought, that's really bad for business.
Yes, it's bad, but he had some good jokes. He had some good jokes in there.
This is very, very bad for business.
He had some good jokes in there, didn't he? Though.
He did, absolutely.
Yeah. All right,
terrific.
Marc, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always. Marc Thiessen, ladies and gentlemen. Read him at thewashingtonpost.com. Here on the Steve Malzberg Show. It's always good to talk to Marc, and who knew we'd be talking hockey. That's always a good thing. All right, folks. So when we return, we are going to bring you some sound bites that you're going to definitely want to hear. So keep it tuned right here. Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.
The Steve Malzberg